So let's start. Good morning. I would like to welcome everybody here to the first parallel session of the second day of this conference. This session will be in regional cooperation as one way to strengthen media viability and resilience, and we will also be talking about a document called the Media Viability Manifesto, and we'll try to find out what this document has to do with the topic of regional cooperation. My name is Guido Kiel. I'm a senior advisor at the Office of the Representative on Freedom of the Media, or the OSCE, and I will be moderating this session. And I'm joined in this session on the one hand by 4 experts with very different backgrounds and different perspectives on the issue of regional cooperation to strengthen media viability. And on the other hand, you'll be part of this session as well, because the organizers gave us plenty of time to discuss this, so you're also invited, when I ask you, to bring in your questions, to bring in your experiences when it comes to regional cooperation among media organizations. Let me first start by looking at this document that I mentioned, this Media Viability Manifesto. My personal approach to this document is, before I joined the OSCE, I just joined the OSCE a few months ago. Before I joined the OSCE, I was active in academia, and I was teaching, I was doing research, and one of my research areas was media viability in non-Western contexts, in Africa, in Asian countries. And from this research, I know that there are very different understandings of what media viability is and what contributes to media viability. And these different approaches can be fruitful because we have different takes and different perspectives on the issue, but also they make the discussion about what to do to strengthen media viability quite difficult. It was hard to agree on measures because we had different understandings of what media viability actually is. And this must have been the motivation of a team of colleagues from the Deutsche Welle Academy to come up with a document that describes in a comprehensive way what can be understood under media viability and how it can be strengthened. So before we dive into the different perspectives on collaboration, media cooperation, let me first introduce one of the authors or the co-authors of the Media Viability Manifesto. It's Elena Milken from Deutsche Welle Academy, and I'd like to find out with you, Elena, what this manifesto is all about. Maybe first you can give us some background on what this manifesto is and what the motivation was to come up with such a document.
Yeah, really nice to be here. Thank you so much for having us. So when we talk about the manifesto, I think it's important to understand that, first of all, of course, we're talking about a document, a publication, a framework, but we're also talking about an initiative. And currently that initiative involves 23 international media development organizations. And as we all heard yesterday, and as we are all experiencing in our day-to-day work, media has been fighting for survival for quite some time, and we started the initiative 2.5 years ago, thinking that the situation was already quite bad, but to be honest, since then it's gotten much, much worse. Digital advertising revenues are primarily going to big tech platforms, as we've heard in the panel yesterday, and also AI is heavily intensifying the financial crisis facing journalism. On top of that, we're seeing the global decline in public funding for journalism, with the US government cuts heavily intensifying the crisis, having global implications around the world and also in the Southeastern Europe region. So the actors that came together to develop the manifesto all felt that they couldn't solve the crisis of media viability working with individual media outlets anymore, but we're all seeing that it's really a systemic crisis in the sector that requires a collective response by many actors, and that's what the manifesto is all about.
So you said that's what it's all about. What does the manifesto actually say? It's a several-page document, but maybe you can just briefly summarize what is it about?
Yes. So the Media Viability Manifesto is the first ever joint framework for common action in the area of media viability, and it includes a sector-wide strategy for media viability, laying out 4 areas of work that collaboration and coordination and support in the field of media viability can be clustered and coordinated around. But maybe first of all to say what were actually the challenges or the problems that we are trying to address when developing this document. So as you said already, Guido, first of all, we really needed conceptual clarity. So we were realizing we were lacking a joint understanding of what media viability, sustainability, resilience actually means, what it entails. So the first component of the manifesto includes clear definitions and terms of media viability and beyond. The second component is the joint strategy, as I mentioned already. Because we felt like that our approaches were fragmented, that they were lacking coherence and collaboration. So we came up with a joint strategic roadmap, and we identified 4 areas of work. As I said, the first one being business and technical support to media. This also includes financial support, quality assurance, capacity development. The second one being all about coalitions and partnerships, so knowledge sharing, networking, initiatives for media viability. The third one is evidence-based advocacy for more funding. And the fourth one is all about research and insights on media viability. And the last component of the Media Viability Manifesto is all about aligning practical implementation. It includes a comprehensive overview of all the different tools and practical approaches that exist in the field, structured along these 4 areas of work. So if you as an organization would like to know what's available to me in terms of media support in the area of business and technical support, you'll find a long list of tools that are already out there. So this is everything you can find inside the document.
Just mentioned how this manifesto can be helpful by listing resources, for example. Maybe you can say a few more words about how this shared understanding of media viability can help individual media organizations or maybe even journalists to become more resilient. So if I look out here, there are media organizations represented here. Why should they read the media, or how can the Media Viability Manifesto help them in their everyday life?
I think it can help in many different ways. So it can help with strategic assessment, either for your own organizations or for a whole group of organizations. So for collaborations, it can help you to identify what your strengths are, where you still have gaps. So we, for example, as part of the initiative with the 23 organizations, we used the strategy to visualize where our joint blind spots are, and we identified that we need to get much more involved in high impact advocacy because we're currently all very much focusing on business, technical, financial support for media. So this is where we're going to focus on in the future. It can also help with fundraising and proposal design. So you can use the strategic roadmap to structure your proposals, your grant applications along the dimensions and principles of the MVM to show that your proposals are aligned with a sector-wide approach, feeding into joint goals. So we've done this when applying for, for EU applications, for example, at DW Academy, we've used the manifesto to structure our activities. It also gives you, because it is authored by so many big international media and support organizations, it gives you insights into what their priorities are, kind of. So because oftentimes they also practically do provide funding for media organizations. I think there's a benefit into having a look at the document and realizing strategically where the sector is going on more of a global level, of course. And also it can help to navigate resources and tools because you have this map of practical approaches that I think are some direct use cases of the manifesto for media organizations.
So the application or the implementation of what the manifesto offers in terms of resources is what's happening now. Do you have other plans how to develop this document? Now it's being published, it's being implemented. Are there other plans to I don't know, carry the document further? What are the next steps concerning the document itself?
Yes, so the initiative continues to exist because we all find it really valuable, and it's something that we haven't seen before. So we recently met to come up with a 1.5-year strategy of where this initiative is going, and first of all, we will of course focus on putting this framework into action, so having discussions like today where we try and contextualize what is in this document, where we discuss with regional stakeholders how it can help to foster collaboration in different regions or countries, because of course this document is just to be seen as a starting point. It needs to be discussed, it needs to be developed further, it needs to be criticized in order for it to have value. But as a group, we decided to, as I said already, heavily focus on advocacy. As mentioned in some of the panels yesterday already, we really want to work towards journalism being recognized as a public good, and we want to advocate jointly to shape policy on media funding. That requires us also to do more research, because in order to come up with joint messaging that maybe also appeals to new donors, we have to really make sure we know what our value proposition is, how we can clearly communicate the impact and the worth of journalism to new stakeholders. So we need data to support that. We will work on that. And lastly, on resource mobilization, so trying to mobilize new public and private sector actors to fund media. This is...
Okay, thank you very much. Let's leave it at this for the moment. We'll get back to the manifesto later. Let's change perspective. And I come to the second expert here. And I have to admit, I only wrote down the first names because we are in such good contact already that I'm referring to the people in first names. I don't even know what the last name is. So that's Bleriana. She's the co-founder. You are the co-founder of and executive director of the Center for Science and Innovation and Development. Mm-hmm. For development. Yes. Can you briefly tell us what this organization is about, maybe to have a better understanding what your approach is to the topic of media viability?
Thank you very much, Guido. It's a pleasure to be here today. SciDev, our think tank, we are based in Tirana. We work on media freedom and safety of journalists. We collaborate very closely with the Safe Journalists Network, as well as with the Media Freedom Rapid Response and Council of Europe platform for the safety of journalists. We monitor cases of violation, we raise alerts. We do a lot of research and advocacy in this regard, and we also work on the digital transformation, and particularly the impact of digitalization on human rights.
And where, with your experience now, having so much interaction with the media and the world of the media, where do you see major challenges for media to be viable these days?
I think that the challenges of media viability, a few of them were also mentioned by Elena, but also covered yesterday, are interconnected and very complex and rooted into the systemic political, economic, social and cultural conditions of the media ecosystem in Southeast Europe and particularly in the Western Balkans, I would say. First, I see the challenge of achieving media viability related to the fragile economy of media ecosystem that have to do with high level of media ownership concentration, opaque media finances, media market concentration and saturation as well at the same time. What we see in the region is that media have also become instrumentalized in the power struggle of powerful political or economic actors rather than act as an independent fourth estate and as we suppose them to act. And in some cases, and I'm including here also Albania, we see them also as part of the power of this clientelistic relationship between owners, but also not only politicians and powerful economic groups, but also sometimes organized crime or even malign foreign interferences. The other aspect has to do with the political system and democratic backsliding. I think this is something that we cannot forget when we discuss media freedom and media viability. Issues with implementation of the rule of law, for example, corruption, and so these tendencies for authoritarianism in the region, this also affect particularly, of course, independent media, local voices, niche, critical media. And then I would like to highlight what Elena mentioned about the broader geopolitical context and this shift that we are seeing after the new administration in the United States towards a more what it is coined as a transactional geopolitical approach. It is not simply about the withdrawal of the funding from the US. Other donors as well are withdrawing or are changing priorities. And we have now what we can say also as a donor drought related very much then with news deserts basically. But this is also coupled with independent media organization, non-for-profit organizations becoming target of attacks across the region, of further intimidation and pressure. So this of course doesn't help with their efforts in terms of building relation with audiences, keeping up a reputation and being viable. The other aspect, of course, is digital disruption. It was discussed yesterday in the panel about the role of AI. Of course, this has to do with changing habits in terms of how we consume news and media content, but also how we produce it. I think it also has to do with the limited capacities and resources that independent media in the region have in terms of access to advanced technology and infrastructure, resources and skills to make use of this digitalization of AI or advanced technology and to use it, to capitalize it and use it in their favor. Of course, viability relies, as I mentioned, or as I understand it, in the very bond between citizens, audiences, and media outlets. Unfortunately, we have seen some even media neglecting or not sufficiently cultivating this relationship with their audiences, and issues, of course, of trust that affect then their viability. For example, of issues with maintaining subscriptions or building new relationships, say, with new audiences, such as, for example, with the diaspora. We've done a study to explore the possibility of diaspora supporting economically local media, and there is an interest on the diaspora, considering that all countries in the Western Balkans have large diasporas, but media outlets have not yet tapped into this potential. And the two last challenges that I would mention, one is about human capital and brain drain. From the one side, we have constant pressures, intimidation, safety issues, particularly towards independent critical journalists that were discussed yesterday as well. But what we also see is that the highly skilled, the bright-minded are leaving the sector and are moving to better paid jobs, like in, I don't know, public relationships, or are completely leaving the country as well. Of course, because of precarious working conditions, harassment, slaps, online abuses, and so on. And without these skilled, motivated individuals, either journalists or media professionals, to work in the sector, it is difficult then to attract talent, to maintain it, and to provide them professional opportunities so as then media can also sustain themselves. And the last one, I think, is the untapped potential of building coalitions. Independent media tend still to remain largely isolated from the rest of the scene, and I think there is opportunities there to strengthen these coalitions in favor of media viability, but maybe we can explore this later on.
Thank you. You gave us a whole list now of challenges that media are facing in order to be viable. Now, referring back to the manifesto and the four dimensions that Ellen were mentioning, you talked a lot about economic, technological challenges, also coalitions. There's also advocacy and research. Where would you say, based on your experience, where lies the greatest potential for media organizations to become more viable?
I think I will pick up where I left it off. Coalitions, for me, offer a great potential. And this is not simply coalitions between media themselves, independent media, local media within a country or cross-border. I think coalitions and partnership building with civil society organization, with academia is very important, with the tech sector, with startups, innovators, but also with the private sector as well. So definitely there is room to develop this further, and we have seen some positive cases and success stories of how building these coalitions can strengthen media, can help with sharing resources, compensating for lack of expertise or infrastructure or resources, knowledge sharing, networking as well, but it also strengthens solidarity among these partners. It also helps with impact and with raising and educating the public of why they need to demand quality journalism, of why they need to be sensitive towards public interest journalism and to see the value of it. So to have this, let's say, demand from the public, from the citizens for quality media and public journalism, public interest journalism, I think it is important to strengthen these coalitions. Also, the coalitions provide an opportunity to have collective bargaining towards, for example, tech platforms that individual countries or platforms cannot do, but also it helps with advocacy towards the government for legal changes or policy changes or some fiscal changes that might help with the viability of the media. And of course, there is now a momentum with the European integration process and the enlargement prospects of the Western Balkans that this coalition can use to advocate for stronger external pressure from the EU. Hopefully still will work in the region, to ensure the necessary legal, regulatory and policy changes for media viability, freedom of expression and safety of journalists. For sure, in terms of business and technical support, I think that it is needed a shift in terms of the donor and media development support. Generally, we have seen one-off projects, fragmented interventions, funds for media content production or trainings, which are all very good and we are all for it. But I think that it's important to have a more shift towards supporting media outlets to become sustained and have viability and independent, to develop their business models, to diversify their revenues. And this shift means that the donor support and the media development support should be more strategic, more in terms of long-term support, and also more sustained, basically.
Okay, again, you guys have a long list of very intriguing or convincing measures that organizations can take. Maybe to have an even better understanding, you first mentioned collaboration as a main approach. Do you have a concrete example that you can think of to show us what would this look like, or how did this strengthen media organizations? A concrete example of collaboration.
In terms of coalition and advocacy, I think one example from the region, of course, is the Safe Journalist Networks. They do research and then advocacy for the safety of journalists, work a lot with, as I said, with European partners, Council of Europe, but also the EU, leveraging this momentum of the enlargement. In terms of, for example, of providing technical support, expertise and resources, we can think of the organized crime and corruption reporting mechanism and tool that supports journalists cross borders with expertise, with editorial support, but also with the necessary infrastructure to protect resources, to develop sources as well. There have been several, at least two main projects, one funded by the UK, which is the Media for All or Media for Change program, and Sustained Media funded by the EU, that are focused precisely on supporting local outlets to develop the business model and bringing them together in cross-border cooperation in terms of content production, but particularly in terms of strengthening their business model, diversifying their revenues, networking and partnership. And I think these are some examples that have both positive stories to tell, also challenges to learn from, then can also be useful for other outlets. One example of coalition that I would like to highlight is also the coalition between independent media and non-for-profit organization or activists working, for example, for the protection of the last wild river in Europe, which is the Vjosa River in Albania. There was this large, broad coalition that brought together scientists from environmental, biology, natural sciences, independent media, civil society organization, environmental activists, so they international partners. So they brought together this coalition and worked to lobby, to advocate for declaring this as the last wild river park, national park in Europe. And that was very successful, and there is there an example of how much coalition and partnership and networking and advocating together can work.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's change the perspective once more. We came from the international think tank to a more regional think tank. Now we go to the media organization, so more on the micro level of journalistic production. And let's go to Darko Dimitrijevic, right? Yes. You're the owner and editor-in-chief of Radio Gorazdevac. And maybe to give us a start, maybe you can briefly tell us what Radio Gorazdevac is. And please allow us to change to headphones, because I think you're going to be talking in Serbian.
Thank you, Guido. It's my pleasure to be here. I continue in Serbian, maybe it's better express. Radio Gorazdevac je zapravo jedan lokalni medij koji...
Radio Gorazdevac is a local media located in Kosovo, in Peć. It exists for 25 years. And even today, we are trying to be sustainable and viable, as all other Serbian media working in Kosovo. But the situation in the whole region is not any better, I would say. In terms of Radio Gorazdevac, we have a couple of platforms apart from this radio. Radio is a local one. But we are also trying to have a production on a commercial basis, and that's really not easy. In the past 7 or 8 years, we also have the website, which is, a global website. And I would like to say that we are considered to be a small miracle, because we operate in Gorazdevac, that's a settlement of 750 people. And this doesn't really mean that we have higher chance or lower chance of sustainability, because there is no much difference between our media and the media located in some other places. We are trying as a local media to make connections with other media in Kosovo and in the region, and maybe this is one thing that made us credible local media. And as I've said, we have celebrated 20 years, and we do operate in a very specific environment.
I understand right, you said that credibility is one key of your economic success, or for your economic or for your survival in general. But let me ask the same question I asked Plariana. Where do you see the biggest challenge for survival for your radio station, for example?
Što se izazova tiče, kada je održivost u pitanju, mislim...
In terms of challenges to sustainability, I think that it's the same in the whole region, including Radio Gorazdevac. We are surviving because of the international grants and the support of international organizations and international institutions. When we talk about local media, the space for commercial operation is very narrow, especially in Kosovo, where the media reporting in Serbian language and working in Serbian language are really in unfavorable position when it comes to this commercial side of the operation. And when we talk directly about our survivor and financing, as I've said, we mostly got the support from international organizations. The largest challenge is actually to implement all media laws. It really doesn't matter, are we talking about government in Kosovo or in Serbia or in the whole region. In Kosovo, we have a lot of abuse of funds, the funds earmarked for media in minority group languages. We just recently had different calls for media, and it was really a scandal there. But on one hand, this is what provides us with the possibility to survive, and on the other hand, we see actually blatant examples of abuse of the funding that is planned to be used for media. So we are trying to make different associations. So in the past 25 years, we have created Kosovo Media Association. We try to use it to our advantage to be more competitive. Now, when we have this web platform, we also created a bit larger media coalition. But Radio Goraždevac is trying to have a connection with the media in the region. This is really challenging because the freedom of media is really deteriorating, as well as freedom of expression in the Balkans. But we do have large challenges when it comes to reporting. It's a challenge for us to have adequate human resources to be the presenters and to work in these local media. This is not the case only for the media using Serbian language. We do have a lot of problems, but also other media using Albanian language also have problems. It is really difficult to ensure stable funding for the operation. So we are basically implementing different program projects. So program projects, for example, focusing on the environment, but you don't have a space to do daily news reporting or reporting on the current issues in the community and problems of the citizens. When we talk about the local media, it is that there is a problem to provide this institutional support that could help us to train the staff and improve the quality of the operations of local media. Nevertheless, setting all these challenges aside, I think that there is a great advantage of being a local small media. Local media have the advantage of being there in the local community, knowing their community, the population, and the population knows the media outlet. And we, for example, have a situation that more often than not, when the local media are trying to do some research, journalism, then they get criticized by those media close to the government, and it's kind of a hostile approach to the local media. And these are the challenges that the local media are facing, including my own.
That are also described in the manifesto You have a sound business plan, you make good business decisions, you try to organize yourself in a way that you can be sustainable, and you work with collaborations. What about the other two dimensions? How important is advocacy and research to be viable as a media organization, or how relevant does this sound to you?
U ovom slučaju zastupanje jeste jako važno.
Advocacy is very, very important because literally 90% of our annual budget is actually coming from the grants. Therefore, advocacy is very important. But when we talk about this connection with this viability strategy, the best way to ensure viability is networking. Media for Change and the program that colleague Bleriana mentioned, this type of networking is very important and brings benefits. I also mentioned Kosovo Media Association, as well as a network that we have with Radio Kim, Radio Mitrovica North. So these are the coalitions or cooperation that we have with other media, and I think that networking is very important. We also have a network, Voice of Community, where together with media that are reporting in Albanian language, we have an excellent exchange of content. And this really is providing us with the possibility to get more for less resources. And also it is important to have regional connections and networking. We had very good programs with the colleagues from Mostar, and now we are about to start cooperation with the media outlet from Tuzla, and within the Media for Change project, we had an excellent cooperation with colleagues from Tirana and Skopje. And I think this is actually the best direction for our work for all media. We simply have to utilize the resources available, and together we can actually get much more benefits from the resources that we all have. So in the context of the manifesto strategy, we local media, some of us from Balkans, from Sarajevo, from Pristina, from Belgrade, and we from the Gorazdevac radio, we had some meetings in the past few months trying to actually initiate some kind of initiative to help the donor community to change their approach when it comes to funding of media. And it would be really great if we could make some impact on the government funds as well, because those funds should be public, transparent, and independent. So I think that we have around 60 local media that has been meeting over the past couple of months.
doing good work. It's not easy to access the money. But I do think more and more organizations try. There is more competition. Partially this is because of the US funding cuts, which are forcing people to compete more for European resources. But also I think there's more awareness that European projects can be meaningful, a sort of good source of revenue and kind of enable growth.
And with your knowledge of the manifesto and those processes, how can the manifesto help me? I'm now a media manager somewhere with my radio station. How can the manifesto help me to maybe make it easier to access these funds or access these bureaucratic institutions?
So, and I think Elena referred to this at the beginning. The manifesto was created by organizations that are very much in the business of interfacing with large bureaucracies, so they understand it. The manifesto is structured in a way that reflects these interactions. So for one example, the manifesto, I think, kind of starts with the theory of change. Now, theory of change is a conceptual framework in describing any type of project, what you want to do, what do you need for it, what will be the sort of outcome, impact, and so forth. This is a conceptual framework that grant-making organizations use a lot. If you are working in a newsroom, you're a newsroom manager, you may have not encountered this framework at all because it's not usually used in media markets. You don't think about your daily operations or even your business in terms of a theory of change. If you read the manifesto, you'll be familiar with, okay, this is an important framework. This is the way it's structured. These are kind of the important parts. And then when you are trying to get institutional funding, you'll be able to better understand what people on the other side of the table expect of you. And then you'll be able to use, I think it's a little bit of a dictionary to you know, for people to understand better the language of some others. This is not real language, but like conceptual language.
So a dictionary you actually need to understand this world or this language.
I think if you want to be successful, it's very important for you to understand how large international organizations think about what their priorities are, and also what is the language that they use, and they, I mean, not explicitly expect their partners to use, but it's good to use the language of your counterparty to be successful.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to open up the round now and include you, and also like to hear from you. Well, if there are any questions, first of all, questions to what we've heard so far, but also I'd like to invite you to share your experience with trying to make your organization, or the organizations in your region more resilient, more viable. Are there any hands right now, things you want to ask or comment on that have been said? There's one in the back.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much. It was a very insightful panel. I would like to specifically address about, for the speech the third speaker made about the local media and about the approach the donors have towards the local media. Many things that you have highlighted resonated with me because I am as well representing the local media. I have a question. Since the democracy is challenged in your country as well, And I believe that the democracy is created on starting from the local levels as well. So the local democracy is something we have to build in order to strengthen democracy in general in the country. Do you have a feeling that the local media and the community media is underestimated in your country, and the potential and resources and approach strategically is not assessed appropriately? How do you think? Thank you.
Što se tiče
As regards the democratic processes and the rule of law, as I said, the local media know their community very well. But in a way, they are always somehow suppressed by larger media outlets. Whenever they try to engage in investigative journalism or to be impartial and independent, I lost the concept a bit. What was the question? Do I believe?
As a prerequisite for democracy.
The voice of the local media is important indeed. But when the society in general is not at the best level, local media can only point to certain issues. We had some very good stories about irregularities, things that were not in accordance with the law, and things that were a part of corruption scandals. However, this didn't resonate with the society in general. We know that governments have their own tabloids and certain media outlets that are close to them, and they prevent such things from being disseminated more broadly. When it comes to the possibilities to cooperate with the government, when it comes to my municipality and my community, there are no big problems there. We can always communicate and engage in some good interaction, but everything ends there. This is the essence of it.
Thank you very much for bringing up specifically the issue of local media. I think, or what we see, and I'll speak here specifically about Albania, is that local media is even more under pressure compared to the others from different perspectives. First and foremost, because there is, I would say, strategic, systemic approach to make professional editorial journalism not necessary anymore. So what we see, at least in our country, is that the government, the municipalities, political parties, economic groups, they produce their own content and they manage somehow to distribute it to all mainstream outlets and televisions, radio, big portals, broadcast it or publish it as it is. So no editorial filters, no gatekeeping, no need for professional journalism because everything is pre-prepared and distributed centrally. We had elections just 10 days ago, and journalists basically did not even report on elections. Everything was done beautifully with drones and everything like in Hollywood movies by the government, the political parties. So there is no space. Nobody needs, apparently, local journalists and local media anymore. Immediately after the election, mainstream television, big ones, are laying off 20 to 30 journalists and media professional technicians in a country like Albania. This is a big number. So basically, this attempt from the powerful groups to make editorial journalism, professional journalism not necessary anymore, the first. The second, of course, is the technological disruption that we mentioned, that it makes it basically very difficult for local media to survive. And then when it comes to donor, local media operate in informality in most of the cases. They lack the resources, the capacities to apply for sub-grants of EU or USAID or, I don't know, other donors as well. And they are left, and we have pockets in the country, in Albania, but I think also in the region as well, that are completely desert in the sense of news production, professional media, content production. And I think it is important here to see that we cannot expect much from this local media to act as voices for democracy, for informed citizens, because they will have to find a way to survive, and usually this is a compromise, this is not the ideal way that we expect from the media. So in this regard, I think that it is very important also to look into, as I mentioned before, on the approach of donor and development support, but also to help the media or to enable them to understand that the role of the media itself is changing very rapidly. So unless we accept it, adapt, and move on, we will not be able to do much. If we will be stuck in the past and in the way that traditional media functioned, and if we don't support and enable them to adapt, then it is going to be very, very difficult. We also have to break the cycle of donor funding. You know, there are this terminology that are not very good of donor darlings, of media that depend entirely on donor support, entirely on USAID support, and USAID was gone within the night, and then there is no more media. So I think it is important to explore other opportunities for fund diversification, investments, to learn from the startup and the innovation, for example, sectors. But local media cannot do this alone. It is important also for intermediaries, civil society organizations, universities, academia to step in, for donor and media development to change the approach, but also for these other stakeholders to support the voices. There are also other independent voices that we are seeing thanks also to technology. Podcasters, for example, has become a thing now, at least in our country, but I think in the region as well. Influencers that are leveraging the technology, that are leveraging also cooperation with startup innovators to bring about new content production, news production, to relate better to what the audiences and the citizens need. And I think this is something that is emerging, and that there is opportunity to support it further. But yeah, definitely for local media there should be increased attention and support, because with the linkages that they have with the community, they can enhance the pressure from the bottom up for the society as a whole. Thank you.
Darko, you want to add something?
Samo moram da pomenem da smo mi prošle godine
Just need to mention that last year, on October 10th, we had a large conference. It was called Media as Cure and Media as Poison. There were two panels, people from all over the Balkans. We even had local politicians, such as mayors, representative of K4, and representatives of different embassies, and they were listening to the journalists, what they were saying. So in this context, it doesn't really, it doesn't boil down to whether we are underestimated or not. We do have stories and examples that really made an impact. If we take a look at this conference, then we can really say that we are fully respected in our communities and our environment. But even if you make the most perfect story, if the ruling elites are against your story, then it really unfolds completely in the other direction.
Thank you. We have another question, I think, or a comment? Here. The microphone is coming. It's over there. The microphone is there.
Thank you. Ja ću govoriti na lokalnom jeziku, pošto ako počnem...
I will speak in local language, because if I start speaking in English, you will not be able to understand me, and also my hands would start to hurt by trying to mimic everything and explain. I'm Admir Kadrić. I am the representative of Brčko District Radio Federation from Brčko District, which is very specific community. It's really independent and community in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I also want to greet the colleagues from Albania and Gorazec, because what you have been talking about and this research journalism, that is the most supreme type of journalism, is difficult to work on research journalism in large cities. That would be the main notion. But that's really not the truth. It's more difficult to be a research journalist in smaller community. Everybody knows you. They know your grandparents and grandparents. So it's very difficult to work under those circumstances. The colleague from Kosovo said that they had 2 attacks. Maybe you have 4 or 6. You just said that you are covering 700 citizens, so I'm guessing you have maybe 4 to 7 employees in your radio. But what I actually want to say is that donors need to really pay attention. If they want to see research journalism, they need to support small communities and the journalists working in their small communities. If we give the opportunity to journalists to point a finger in their small community to a person doing something wrong, that would be good. But what happens, for example, in Brčko, people from Sarajevo come, or from Belgrade, they do the research journalism project in a way. They write a story, they usually make a good story, but then it ends there. They never come back, and nothing changes. It remains just as a story published at one point. So the journalists who remain there would like to do the research about the same topic and write something, but we cannot. And this is what is important. The journalists should be taken care in smaller communities, and people from OSCE should start sitting together with, so-called small community journalists and to help them to directly communicate with their authorities and to make sure that their work will continue and that they will be protected. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me at this conference.
We heard now that maybe the role of local media is underestimated as a prerequisite for democracy. We heard that acquiring funding is difficult because you have to struggle with bureaucracy that's not familiar to you. Plus, your work can be more difficult if you work in a small local journalism. To what extent does the manifesto address these very unique circumstances of small local media?
Thank you. I think we have to be honest here is that it absolutely cannot do justice to these very specific circumstances that journalists are facing in all different regions over the world. I mean, it's not just cultural context, legal context, but it's also different technological environments. And we were trying our best to integrate these as concepts in the strategy, in the definitions, but we're trying to make very clear throughout the whole document that it has to be contextualized, it has to be taken into local, national context, regional context, and adapted, because there's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to media viability and when it comes to journalism. So,
okay, thank you. Are there more comments, questions? Yes, there's one over there. Please wait for the microphone.
Thank you very much. My name is Dejan Šajnović. I'm a journalist from an independent newspaper here from Bosnia and Herzegovina, from Banja Luka. So my question is, I'm very, very often present at similar conferences like this one, and always what strikes me is that we journalists are the ones, it seems to me, who are pushing for these things, who are saying we are important, independent journalism matters, it's public interest. And as you say, we have very often public saying, well, actually, we may not need you. We need some easy stories, gossips, whatever. And then maybe journalists will one day come to conclude that it's actually we are fighting the fight that's already lost. Maybe it's just better for us to switch, to sell to a political party, or to start doing something that's going to actually give us some money that we can actually survive. So I'm very sometimes worried, and I actually need somebody to tell me that I'm wrong, that there is actually a much more public, maybe not so explicitly present, but that there is actually force within the societies that are actually going to help us to advocate for the fact that actually journalism is not just, as the Ambassador Bratu said in his initial remarks, it's not something that's just for journalists, it's also something that serves to the whole society. So essentially I need somebody to tell me that it's going to be fine.
So who wants to tell him that things are going to be fine? Or at least give some hope that it's not time to give up everything.
I mean, I fully agree and relate to that. But I think, you know, when there are time of crisis or uncertainties, citizens will still need quality, verified information. And that's why also before I made the point that this is not the fight only of journalists and of media support organizations like my own, but this should be a broader alliance and coalition to even educate, if it's necessary, the citizens, the public, for the value of public interest journalism. And I think here an important role has the education system, starting from the preschool up to university. I see an important role for the civil actors, being officially registered civil society organization or informal groups or networks or initiatives, because they are also directly linked to communities. And for sure then, of course, looking into government, political parties and other responsible authorities to keep up the fight for the value of the public interest journalism, but also to educate the public. It's not simply about media literacy, media and information literacy, IE literacy, AI literacy now, but it is also to understand that with protecting public interest journalism and independent journalists, you are protecting the information that you get as a citizen. You are protecting your own self, basically, and the interest of the country as well. So there is a chain of reaction there that sometimes I think we need to push stronger for. Because, of course, there are other narratives that are circulated. Of course, it is easy to blame, you know, the media. It is also easy to blame the technology or even the consumers because they want reels and funny stories. But there is still room and hope, I think. But there is a need for change and adaptation, also on the side of media and journalists, media support organization, media development, donors, but also on these other actors that I mentioned, to increase the public demand and public interest and public sensibility and sensitiveness towards public interest journalism. So there is hope, but we need to work more strongly together, I think.
As a Swiss, I guess I should make sure that we are staying time, but I think we started a bit late, so we can also go a bit longer. Are there more comments or questions? Yes, a microphone. Can we have a microphone up front?
Yeah, well, I shouldn't really be doing this, but because I'm supposed to listen. And I want to thank the panel for really insightful comments. But I have been working as a Norwegian diplomat for 30 years, and from the 1990s onwards, we put a tremendous amount of money and effort into supporting media, including local media in the Western Balkans. So I have some first-hand experience with this, as from the donor side. First of all, I'd like to say that I think the donors put too much attention on the media in capital cities. There is a tendency not to see local media. And I actually do believe that democracy begins in local communities. I think it's vitally important that more attention is given to supporting local media. Having said that, working in local context is, and I believe Ms. Bino said it, it is probably the most dangerous or difficult. I know that Darko has good experiences with the local authorities in Pejapech, and I know the mayor, Gazman Muhajeri, personally, and I know he's a very decent person. But not all mayors are decent persons. And this is part of the problem. The local power contexts are sometimes extremely harsh and brutal. And I've spent some years working in Serbia, and I think I can say that we see there also how local power structures do everything possible to control, to harass, to prevent local media from working and reporting. And I think it's the same in Bosnia-Herzegovina as well, and in other countries in the region. So I think it's important that we keep this in mind. Peter mentioned something that I don't know if it resonated or not, but I know how complicated it is to apply for EU funding. And I know that many organizations that apply for EU funding have to hire consultants to fill out the application forms. So, you know, this is also something where we can work on capacity building, but when you're talking about local media with very few employees, with very little administrative capacity, not because they don't, I mean, they're not intelligent, but they just don't have the time. They're in the business of creating content. So to take the time necessary to fill out all these application forms, that's a job in itself. And I think from the donor community, we have to be aware of that, and we have to be even more supportive of, we have to make it easier to provide money to local media somehow. But at the end of the day, we have to talk about real sustainability. And real sustainability is not about getting grants. As a Norwegian diplomat, we gave grants all over the place, all over the Western Balkans, and we probably supported too many media outlets. Because after 20 years, the money stops, or it's reduced. And as a director back in Oslo, I would get the question from my political bosses, so how long are we supposed to be doing this? We've been doing it now for more than 10 years, 20 years in fact. How long are we supposed to keep doing this? Because we have other calls for our money. That's a question that we need to address. EU funding is great, but US aid funding was great too. It was fantastic. And then bang, it's gone. So to develop models of sustainability that do not depend entirely on grants, I think is a crucial issue. Media is a public good. And then we can talk about how we get citizens to support that. You know, you go to the village and you talk about media literacy, you're not going to get very far. This is something we can talk about in capitals where we have academics and people. We go to the village, they care about what is important for them, for their daily lives. And I think that's why outlets like Radio Goraždevac, and by the way, they report on much more than 750 people. They're actually the whole region of, well, you can maybe say Metohija or the Gujini region. And their broadcasts, their website is read all over Kosovo and beyond. But it's what the local content, what's important for local people. And I think it was the colleague from Brčko who wanted some hope. And I think what I would say is that we see in Norway and many other countries, people don't subscribe anymore to national media, they subscribe to local media. Because local media tells them something that's important for their daily lives. So I think that's also part of it. Our colleague, I don't know if he's here today now, Einaide Holin from Schibsted Group, was talking about and writing about the importance for media to be relevant. Relevant. If you are relevant, people will want to read you and they will even be willing to pay to read you, I believe. At least that's my hope. And that's what I would like to share with you, that we have to transition to a model where donor funding is not the core funding, but where we get this, or you get actually, the citizens to see the relevance of your media, which means you deal with local topics, topics that are important for people where they live. And then others will deal with maybe the big issues or whatever. You can deal with that too from the local context. So this is just my 2 cents worth based on previous experience. But thank you for a great panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think with this we have to come to an end. And we lack a bit of time to make a big final round. But maybe what we can take from the discussions we had is that, yes, there are manifold challenges to the situation, not only in the area here, by the way, but globally. But I think we also heard plenty of approaches how we can also overcome these challenges. The Media Viability Manifesto can be a tool to help, to reflect and further develop one's own actions to become more resilient, more viable. And it's not something that's being made for the academic world to feel good about it, but it's a tool to use and to apply. And I invite you to familiarize yourself with this tool and to see how this can help you in your efforts to become more viable. Thank you very much to the experts. Thank you very much to you.
welcome back. If I can get my panel speakers on the stage, will be fantastic. We can get started. Wonderful. So as we wait that some more people come back to the room, I just introduce myself. My name is Barbara Triomfi. I am acting principal advisor at the Office of the Representative on Freedom of the Media. And I'll be moderating this session about fact-checking and how do we boost resilience against disinformation through fact-checking. We'll be, sorry, just check the time. We'll have a bit over an hour, I believe. And I very much hope to keep this interactive, both amongst the panelists, but also with you, all of you in the room. Get your questions ready, anything you would like to share about this topic. Disinformation is a huge topic, of course. I don't know that we have good solutions yet, but let's see how fact-checking can contribute to it and how fact-checking is relevant for independent journalism. The panel before discussed the viability issues, the financial aspects of independent journalism, and this panel will also discuss how can we keep up the quality, how can we make sure that our audiences and citizens in general, people in general, receive accurate, credible information and boost the trust of news media, which in turn is important for the financial aspects, for the viability of it, and for our democracies. I'll introduce the speakers as I ask them to answer the first questions. And Florian, let me start with you. Florian Schmidt is head of fact-checking at the Austria press agency, APA, which is the Austrian news agency, basically. Wrong. So, Florian, APA is obviously a news organization that's been a huge news organization, very important for the German-speaking world and beyond. And I understand a few years ago, less than 10 years, approximately 10 years ago, APA decided to create an all-new department dedicated to fact-checking. Why this? Why this step in this moment? And also, what is the relationship between the journalistic part of APA's work and the fact-checking elements of it? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question and thank you for the invitation. Our fact-checking department is not 10 years old, it's a little younger. It was created in 2020, right before the pandemic. And if there are any conspiracy theorists in this room, no, we didn't know that the pandemic will break out, so it was quite a coincidence. But we noticed at that point that there are a lot of fakes in the world, and they increase not only in quantity but also in quality. So a normal journalist hasn't the time in his normal workday to debunk those fakes, and we said, okay, we need specialists, we need professionals who only care for these kind of fakes, who are trained to debunk them and to recognize them. And so we started to build an own team. And I myself, I'm in this field for more than 7 years now, or 8 years, I think. And I was trained to use open source intelligence, for example, OSINT tools, yeah, because you have a lot of tools online to debunk fakes or who help you to debunk fakes. And so you have to have experts in each editorial office who can use those tools. And I tried to build a team with people who are experts on this. And we are also there to produce this own text sort fact checks, which is quite a new text format. And yeah, So we try to specialize on this and to help our colleagues. But I have to say, of course, every journalist is also a fact checker, and everyone in this room is also a fact checker. So we are not some kind of better journalists, but we have knowledge which might help in special cases.
Just maybe a very brief follow-up question. Do you serve APA News, or do you serve the journalistic community in Austria? The news media community in Austria?
In first line, we serve Meta because we have a cooperation with Meta. But we are also there for our own editorial office to help the colleagues if they need our help. And we, of course, are also helping colleagues from other media companies if they contact us. But most of the time we specialize on social media claims, which are only important for the social media platforms that we cooperate with.
Very good. I don't know if you serve Meta. I think you serve Meta's users, probably more than Meta itself.
That's true.
Thank you so much for that. Let me move to you, Rashid. Rashid Krupalia?
Yeah.
Very good. Is that's getting even more difficult. Editor-in-chief at Raskrinkavanje.
Raskrinkavanje.
Thank you. I understand you were a journalist before. You were an editor-in-chief, and recently you moved to do more fact-checking. Are you still doing journalism? Again, I'm trying to understand the relationship between these two professions. That definitely, obviously, there are interlinkages, but what are the differences as well?
Yeah, I mean, the links between the two are very tight. Fact-checking is in fact inherent to journalism, and as colleague said, every journalist is also a fact-checker at some point because that's something that journalists do. So yes, I spent a lot of my years in media, and then only recently I moved to fact-checking, like specific branch of journalism. And it happened so that I moved at the time right before the pandemic started. So I just dived into this sea of disinformation that appeared or rised when the pandemic started. And that's basically where I learned most of what I know about fact-checking. I mean, as a separate branch of journalism, not as a practice that journalists do. Like I said, those two are really tightly interconnected, although they might seem like separate things, but yeah, there are close links between the two.
Very good. And let me move to Maria. Maria is a journalist at KRIK. Again, maybe from a newsroom perspective, how do you work at KRIK? Do the journalists do the fact checking? Have you created a separate figure of the fact checker? Do you refer to external fact checker? How does that work there?
Thank you for inviting me. I would like to switch to Serbian just for the sake of fluency, if that's okay.
Sorry, Marija Vučić, I forgot to introduce you properly.
Ja sam Marija Vučić, novinarka.
My name is Marija Vučić, a journalist from KRIK Network from Belgrade. It's a research investigative newsroom that exists from 2015. In 2017, KRIK established a mini newsroom called Raskrinkavanje.rs, and they focus on fact-checking and debunking of disinformation in the public space. So our newsroom reads newspapers, we follow TV programs every day in order to see what is not true, and then we debunk this. This is the fact-checking that takes place on a daily basis in our newsroom. We check everything based on what can be found out there, online and on social media. The second level of fact-checking, which I honestly prefer, is fact-checking as a part of the investigative process, as one step in producing an investigating story. In Serbia, apart from KRIK, the Center for Investigative Journalism also has fact-checking. This is a step that follows after a journalist writes a story, when it gets edited, and then it's sent to a fact checker. I played this role several times, although I'm primarily a journalist, and I, as a fact checker, when I receive a story for checking, I did not work on this story. I'm not related to it in any way, so I start checking everything from scratch. And this is very important to have this distance. And my job as an in-house fact checker is to try to debunk the story, to try to question everything that I can in the story in order to see where we have the gaps. We want the story to be bulletproof because we don't want, after the story gets published, we don't want to be sued, because we do get sued from time to time, and we want to be able to present evidence. So I, as a fact checker, look for evidence and corroboration from every single claim in a story. From the simple sentence that a certain woman is a wife, to a certain politician, to checking figures, is it 10 million euro related to corruption? So for all claims in the story, you have to offer proof. If there is no proof, you have to change the wording. We have to either rephrase it or delete it from the story. We have to delete the sentences that cannot be corroborated. Over the past 10 years that I've been involved in fact-checking and journalism, I played both roles. When I worked on investigative articles as a journalist, and when my story is sent to a fact-checker, the process is different from my perspective, because the fact-checker annoys me. They ask me for some things that seem perfectly clear to me, that two people are married, but the fact-checker insists that we have to have everything in paper, we have to have relevant proof to corroborate every single claim. So when you are a fact-checker, you are like a pain in the neck for journalists. But this is what saves journalists, ultimately. And when it comes to resiliency and the importance of fact-checking, this rigid system of checking every single fact and every single claim is a very good way to protect yourselves from potential attacks that will begin once the story is published.
And thank you also for bringing in this aspect. So fact-checking not only to counter disinformation, but simply, and so to make sure that our audiences do not receive information that is not accurate or that is misleading, as they would receive probably from many other social media platforms and so on, but also as a way to protect your own media outlets, to make sure that you're not so vulnerable to lawsuits and these type of attacks. Let me turn to you, Milica Kovacevic, Director of the Center for Democratic Transition. You're based in Montenegro. It seems straightforward. There is information that is not accurate. We check it to make sure we produce information that is accurate. We put out information that is it's absolutely straightforward. I know you've done a lot of research on the role of fact-checkers in this region and beyond, and also what your research revealed, that fact-checkers are also target of attacks. Why that? Which type of attacks? Why are they so targeted?
I will try to connect that to this introduction and the obvious question of the friction between fact-checking and journalism. Our fact-checking outlet is Raskrinkavanje Me, and you notice the similarities in the names. And that is because group of the people from the region, activists who cared about harmful influence of disinformation, but also journalists who wanted to do a kind of journalism that didn't exist in the region, or it was dying because of the production of the unverified, superficial propagandist articles. We sat together, we planned together, we designed methodology together, and then it started first in Bosnia and Serbia, and then in 2018 in Montenegro. But the idea was that there is a need and that we can't pretend that the problem will be solved if we don't engage. Because me personally, so now I'm working on this, but before that I was saying, you know what, this should be done by journalists, by journalist association. These problems, they are better prepared, equipped, they have better credibility to do that. But then no one was doing that. So we started doing fact-checking, and actually the first challenge before other came, before our influence caused attacks that I will mention later, the first challenge that we were facing was lack of solidarity and the willingness of journalist community to recognize us as important for journalism as an activity in the public interest. I think that's different now, and I see a huge difference, because in first year I would come to these conferences, and then a bunch of journalists will start asking questions, asking whether I'm a journalist. I'm not a journalist. I'm a policy person. But our newsroom, our editor, our executive, they are all journalists. But it doesn't matter. It was like the fear that you will be checked. It was the questioning of methodology. It was this, what Maria said, pain in the neck, that we are killing the good journalism by asking all the stupid questions and looking for proof for everything. And then I would answer then with a simple question, like pretending to be naive and saying I was never a journalist, but can you tell me, is that rule still valid, that you have to check every information from 3 independent sources? And why you stop doing that? Why you don't do that? So we basically now have better relation with real journalism. We have good relation with journalism that works in the public interest, and we are still one of the favorite targets of attack for tabloids, for propaganda, for paid journalism, which it's media, it's businesses that produce something that is not journalism, basically. I think that we got some credibility because of the good work that we done, but it also created many problems for us. So owners of the outlets, then entire very well developed infrastructure on the social media that can, create a viral, strategic smear campaign, and that we all are journalists who sign articles, who appear, with their identities, their faces, whenever they publish something, and we publish articles every day. They know that tomorrow there might be a day when they will be threatened, insulted, and that their mothers and children will read that. So it's a situation, that is not pleasant. But then I believe that anyone who does this kind of journalism, or even like what Krik is doing, investigating corruption and organized crime, that basically the best journalism means that you have to be ready tomorrow that whatever you publish will face an attack. Attacks are coming from the politics. Politicians want to control the public discourse. The term fake news, we are now avoiding it because of the use of Donald Trump and then Bolsonaro and Putin and whoever. We also have our own ruling party putting targets on media reporting that they don't like. They put the label fake news. There is a lot of political and economic interest, and there is a little support. and there is some common understanding that we have chosen to do that. So that we signed and we didn't read the small letters, which means if you are entering this world, then this is how your life looks like. And one of my worries and one of the things that we discussed, that we also normalize that. So because I feel like I don't feel comfortable playing a victim, and I want to be that brave person that says it doesn't matter, but it actually means normalizing that and teaching youngers and new journalists coming in that it's completely normal that your good work in public interest is tomorrow followed by some really unpleasant things happening to you.
Really a lot of interesting things to unpack there. First of all, interesting that you say, and maybe a little bit of good news, you said now this new type of journalism that you decided to resurrect is more normalized, is more accepted. That is a very good news. Interesting that this new type of journalism is, for me, from my opinion, is the only type of journalism. That's how we define journalism.
Yeah.
It's fact-based,
I mean,
it's
we
accurate.
had to
That's what
sell
journalism
it.
is. But
we had to sell it as a new type. But every good journalist knows that in ideal circumstances, which don't exist, if there is money and if there is will, they would have a fact checker, because that would make your work easier. But we do trainings and we work with journalists, and we are hoping that some traditional mainstream news outlets will introduce these practices. In Montenegro, no one has that official position, mainly for the financial reasons, because good media are actually suffering. But there are also other reasons, because if there is a political motive to do something and publish something that is not entirely true, there would be a record left that fact checker fact-checked that, and that the editor still decided to run something that is not fully. So there are many by the owners, by the businesses. There is still not a full acceptance, but I now believe that, like, everyone calling themselves journalists understand that we are helping, and we nowadays receive a lot of calls. Questions like for advice, how do we use this, how do we check that, do you have anyone there? So we also, we are now credible contacts. I'm not part of the newsroom, but our newsroom is finally peers and colleagues.
Yeah. Really interesting. Let me go back to you, Florian. So yesterday, one of the speakers said that disinformation has succeeded in destroying the very concept of truth. Many of us, many people, it seems that everything is just claims and counterclaims. How can we ensure that our audiences understand, that your audiences understand that the fact-checked information that you distribute is not just another claim, but is something else? So is there, and maybe the broader question is fact-checking just checking the information, or is there an educational aspect to it? Is our audience learning something from your work?
That's a good question. I think there are two keys to success to reach that goal, that everyone knows, okay, there is some kind of fact base that everyone can trust. The first one is that we are fully transparent, so that we show each source that we used in our fact checks, that the user and the reader can follow each step that we take in the fact check by his own. That's very important. So I think we should do a lot of transparent work in our fact checks. Sometimes fact checking is also called kind of journalism plus, because we do those steps. You all know news articles where you find sentences like, according to a study of the University of Texas, and then you cannot find a link to the study. And some people think, okay, where is the study? I want to read in the study what the study says. And that's exactly what we fact checkers are doing, to link the users to the sources so that they can check each information by their own. They don't have to trust us, they have to trust science and studies. And that's one point. And the other key to success that I mentioned would be the spread of media literacy. So if each user knows how to check claims like fact checkers, for example, with by using reverse image search, or by using internet archives, or by knowing how to Google properly to find the results, not on site 10, but on the first few results, then they don't have to rely on anyone at all. They don't have to trust fact checkers and journalists. So this would be a really big step, and so we try to deliver the media literacy. We have a very big knowledge about all those techniques, and we don't only try to spread it to journalists, but also to everyone in society. Because I think that's the key, not only to people trusting journalism, but also to not being affectable for fake news.
Just out of curiosity, where do I find all that information? Where do you publish it? Because APAS serves primarily the news industry in terms of the news that you produce, but what about the debunking aspects of it? Do I have to go on your website, or how do you disseminate that?
Yeah, the fact checks we offer for free on our website. So we publish it on the website, and everyone can see it for free. We also distribute it by social media, for example, or by different projects like the German-Austrian Digital Media Observatory, which is a European digital media observatory co-financed by the European Union. And there are also a lot of projects where we try to spread media literacy by video tutorials, for example.
Interesting. I want to then ask from other panelists as well, how do we cut through the noise of this information better? But let me go back to Maria. We were talking before, and you mentioned that the nature of fake news in Serbia has changed since in the past 6-7 years, and also the nature of disinformation has changed in Serbia. I wanted to understand how do you see that, and how do you see your work has changed?
Jeste se promenilo, to je, nemam sad.
Yes, there have been changes. I do not have any statistics to confirm that. It's really based on my personal impression, because I have been reading since 2017 all the portals, all the news, and my colleagues also believe the same. It seems that the fake news nature has changed. In 2017, when you would open a tabloid, there was a lot of work for us, easy work to do. For example, you would have the text about something happening and that actually did not happen, or somebody said something and actually the person did not say that. So there were like some claims that something is a fact, and you could easily contest that. I hope I'm clear enough when explaining this. I'm talking about the possibility to contest a certain fact. But now, in the course of time, they shifted from fake news to propaganda. So fake claims, fake news towards propaganda, meaning in the past you would have a lot of texts saying that Russia, for example, yesterday sent us that many weapons. Nowadays, a lot of more texts is focusing on the fact or the explanation and writing about Putin, being like a king. So it's more of a propaganda nature and involving emotions than writing blunt fake news. So how can you contest that Putin is a king or kind of a king? You can do it once or twice, but not more than that. And same goes with internal politics. They are shamelessly praising Vučić and his team. You know, they are saying president hit the table with his hand. President had the fantastic speech in UN, and so on. And on the other hand, they are only writing about offenses, about opposition. Of course, we can criticize the opposition, but they are just writing offenses and giving them some pejorative meaning and, you know, mentioning Albin Kurti and things like that. This is the language that we see in the daily press. And as a fact checker, you cannot do anything about that. You can only write an article about rhetorics, you know. So I have a feeling that for some time now, I have been writing the same text. And all of us fact checkers are in this dead end. Fact checkers, compared to journalists are researching and writing and getting, finding unknown information. And fact checkers are only working with what is already there in the public space. Under the circumstances, simply this is, you know, devaluing our work and, you know, killing our motivation and intelligence. But unfortunately, this blunt propaganda is what gives the results in Serbia.
This is interesting because I remember I've been working in this area for a few years, and I remember when we started talking about disinformation rather than propaganda, we said, you know, it is so difficult to detect disinformation, and disinformation is so problematic for society because it generates confusion in our audiences. It generates exactly compromises the very notion of truth, the very notion of journalism, the very notion of facts. And some were saying, you know, in good old times when we had propaganda, that was easier because readers or audiences got used to understand what is propaganda and to read through between the lines and so on. And now you're telling me you're going back to propaganda, and yet it is equally damaging for journalism. What is the difference there? Is it maybe the role that big tech plays in all this, in disseminating, or does it have to do with the message, that the message is still there to compromise journalism, to attack independent journalism, or does it have to do with the way this is disseminated, in your opinion?
Pa ne znam tačno kako bih odgovorila na to pitanje.
I'm not sure how to answer your question. I actually think that there are many factors involved there. I don't think it's by chance that propaganda was used as tool and is being used in a country like Serbia, because you just keep confusing the people. My personal impression is, and I think that's not only in Serbia, but globally, it seems like nobody really cares what is important and what is not. The things are kind of shaded, and we as fact checkers are the last defense line to defend the facts. You know, you have people who really do not care about the facts, and we, the fact checkers, are there cheering ourselves and saying, yeah, we got the facts. I love to say, if you take a feather pillow and throw it, all the feathers from your balcony, downstairs you will be able to collect some of the feathers, but not all. So your message will reach some people, but not all. So I think that people simply do not care is something correct or not. It's more if it's something that is in line with your mindset. If I vote for the SNS, I will find a way to explain to myself that whatever they did is okay, and you are a foreign agent telling me something that is not true, because I want to believe that the party I trust is a good party and that I'm on a good side of the history. So apart from propaganda, I don't want you to misunderstand me. So apart from this gray line propaganda that we are suffocating in, there is also one thing that is happening in Serbia right now against my media outlet. The regime in Serbia has all their fake analysts, and they are a machinery. There is a whole machinery to produce false information and lies. And they are simply criticizing media, opposition, and everybody except the regime. And one analyst in these tabloids that is used to kill the opposition by his words, is now a minister. So the chief editors of tabloids, I talk to them, and I believe that they know what kind of dirty job they are doing for the government. But of course, that's compensated with different benefits that they are getting. So there are fake analysts, fake NGOs that are produced by the regime, and they find these NGOs, and then they simply throw a bag of lies against us, for example, against my media outlet. So it was a documentary, and the whole country saw it. It was published. It was broadcasted on public service. They said that Krik is spy, shady organization. They don't have their, we don't have their own office. We don't have a phone. And they had this in the documentary, a journalist in front of our office, nobody's there, nobody's answering the phone. Like we are, a shell company in some Virgin Island, registered in a shed or something like that. So they simply are trying to create the image that we are a shady organization pushing for some foreign interests. We do have the office, we do have a phone, we answer the phone, and all of the things that they presented are lies. And they also said that our chief editor got money or a bribe not to publish some article, and it was published on our website. And they even put this as a screenshot, so stupid like that. So if you look at this carefully, you could easily unpack this whole lie scheme behind this documentary. So they made a documentary that looks like a real documentary. So it's for a sophisticated audience. And they really made an effort. So this really seemed like a research work, but it's actually propaganda. And we can only go to court and contest this because, they will have to prove that our chief editor received bribe. And they will also have to prove everything they said in this documentary. But if we talk about the effects, this case or the lawsuit that we will win eventually and get few thousand euro compensation will really, it won't mean anything, because hundreds, thousands of people saw that in this documentary, my editor presented as junkie, spy. For example, in my own family, people know me and they know that I have integrity, that I'm fair, but ultimately they do not understand who do I work for? What does it mean to have a donor? How are we financing our operations and so on and so forth? So even the people who know me well are asking these questions. So this is really, I'm sorry, maybe I'm, going into the wrong direction, but this story about foreign agents is something that simply was invented in 90s, and we still cannot get rid of that in Serbia, but in this country as well.
It's very relevant what you shared, and it's very concerning. And for me, this is absolutely the clue, and I would like to ask Milica and Rashid, how do we, first of all, Rashid, is the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina similar? Are you also targeted with this type of smear campaigns and so on? But more importantly, how do we cut through the noise of disinformation? How do we get our message through?
Well, yeah, I would like to start with 2017 when we started. When Raskrinkavanje actually started, I wasn't part of the team yet. The situation was quite different because the relationship with the media was relatively fine. Everybody welcomed the initiative to fight fake news, and as well relationship with other actors. And that somehow changed rapidly when we started actually debunking stuff and actually publishing analysis of fake news. Those attacks on us, or those claims that we do, I don't know, that we are foreign mercenaries, what Maria said, they intensified at the time of the pandemic when we suddenly felt this intense criticism of our work, and then it continued as invasion of Ukraine started, and when the disinformation from Russia started pouring in here. So when we started debunking disinformation about Ukraine, we suddenly felt a lot of pressure, and we heard a lot of accusations that we are foreign agents and similar. So basically that's like one higher level of threats and threats and security issues that we have. On the lower level, we have private threats that journalists receive, very personal stuff that we are exposed to, and it doesn't go away. It's like a constant flood of threats and of security issues that we face. So basically, I mean, it is something that needs to be addressed, but at the same time, like Milica said, we are starting to normalize that, and we are starting to feel, okay, that's now our reality, and we can't do anything about it. We have to do something about it, definitely, because it affects not only our work, but it also affects personal health of people that work in fact-checking, so it is a big deal. How do we stop disinformation was the second question, I think.
Well, that's a very ambitious goal, but yes, how do we get our message across? Yeah,
I mean, the fight against disinformation is much bigger than fact-checking itself. Fact-checking was never meant to be like the sole tool to fight disinformation. Somebody mentioned media literacy, I think, yeah.
Lauren.
That's very important, and unfortunately in our society it's overlooked all the time. I mean, we do have in Bosnia a network of organizations that deal with media literacy, and it's a very informal network of organizations. That part of society, of teaching society how to recognize this information needs to be strengthened. It needs to be more formalized, because without a formal network, we are not going to achieve a lot in that department. When it comes to schools and education, things are changing. Some schools are introducing media literacy to curricula, but that is also very fragmented in Bosnia, and it's not enough. So what I'm trying to say is that fact-checking is part of the fight against disinformation, but it's not the whole fight. There are a lot of other different areas that need to be included. but it is important because it creates sort of a base of fact checks or base of claims that are debunked. Once you have like a really broad base of those claims that are debunked, you can use it in the future when those same claims or similar claims appear. Then you have a basis that you can use to fight future disinformation. Another interesting method of doing that we didn't mention here is called pre-bunking, which is like inoculation of audiences. So basically what you do, you use debunks from previous claims that are debunked, and then you build these pre-bunks that are actually like warnings about the disinformation that you know might appear in the future, probably about some event that is like going to repeat, like anniversaries or stuff like that. And that is like a method that I think it's going to be really complementary with the debunk and something that is going to be important in the future of fact-checking.
Thank you, and it seems that that's also part of building media literacy in the end. It's part of education. It's part of trying to tell the people also where this information comes from. You know, make sure that people understand many disinformation campaigns are coordinated campaigns. There is somebody who has an interest in disseminating certain type of information. And
that is another thing that I wanted to say when we spoke about propaganda. I mean, fact checkers deal with factual claims. We debunk factual claims. Propaganda is something different. It's building a narrative that conveys a message or influences somehow public opinion. But it is what it is. It's a narrative that is built on disinformation, on specific parts of claims that can be debunked. So what we do, we debunk those claims. We are not going to debunk like propaganda narrative. That is a lot of work, and it's not job of fact checkers. But we can debunk specific claims that build this narrative and thus explain the propaganda narrative that comes from abroad or maybe from here as well, because we also have domestic propaganda narratives. So yeah. That's
of course. Thank you. Before I turn to questions from the floor, maybe one question for you, Milica. You've been looking at the situation both in Montenegro and beyond. First of all, is there a lot of disinformation campaigns seems to be going around very much cross-border as well. We see a lot, what you say, that these narratives are being built and we see them in many countries. Is there cross-border cooperation also between fact-checkers? Should there be more? How do you see that?
Even if you didn't ask, I would, because when you ask for recommendations and solutions, my first thought always is this is not something that any nation can do completely entirely on their own, at least in this region, but I think generally globally. So in this region we share the same language. We call it different national names, but we fully understand each other. And most of the people don't know which language I personally claim to speak. And that language doesn't recognize national borders, and you can't stop it at national borders, and you shouldn't stop it, because that exchange doesn't happen only on negative scenarios, but also on real information. I know often international community prefers if we talk about malign foreign influences coming from regional global players, so everyone is interested in hearing how Russia influences this information spectrum, or China, and that is a problem, and it's not a small problem. But right now, at this moment, there is a center for disinformation and propaganda that produces own narratives and disinformation, but also translates translates and localizes for entire Balkans this information coming from these sectors, and that center is in Belgrade, and that center is affiliated to Serbian government, if not completely controlled. So, for example, if you take Montenegro, and we do this like monthly or a biannual analysis, and you'll see that vast majority of this information actually doesn't come from mainstream media in Montenegro. It comes from, it's always big like social media, but then when you analyze sources and ties, it all in the end connects to the outlets that are affiliated to Serbian government. So there is systematic disinformation. And then while we cooperate and we work a lot together, and we have created C-Check network, and we have regional newsroom, and we exchange. I don't see that level of cooperation amongst our governments, and but we see, like in all our countries, annual European Commission reports that we have to recognize, improve. Then we see all these declaration of Western Balkans meetings, and then we have a lot of these regional initiatives by international organizations, but there is no commitment of the governments, because that problem is really, really obvious. Then, even with that, we also have a great communication with the fact-checking community on the level of Europe. So we are a member of European network. We work with our colleagues all over from Europe. We have their support, and we had their support when it was a question who is EU and who is not EU. It was always we all Europe. So Western Balkans groups should be part of this, because you can't stop disinformation on the borders. But in terms of European Union mechanisms and policies related to the disinformation, we are excluded. And I constantly repeat that who knows whether we'll become members of the EU or how soon, but when we are speaking about gradual integration, that we should be let in to use also benefits of being part of these mechanisms, because, for example, when it comes to social media, Montenegro doesn't exist for big tech. So Facebook, they don't recognize us. We are so small that even our government writes an email. I'm not sure that anyone ever response. I'm also really worried that I don't see enough commitment on that. So, for example, Montenegro is now, again, a leader and front runner of fake reforms that should lead to integration. We were allowed in December last year to close the negotiation chapter 10, which is information society and media. We were allowed to close it without even started thinking about implementation of DSA, because we have to prepare. Okay, it will be for us enforceable once we become a member, but many European Union members are struggling really much to prepare the grounds for implementation. Why? Because it was easier to judge us on the criteria, on the benchmark that was established in 2012 before this. So I don't see enough commitment of our governments, and I don't see enough pressure from the international community and from the European Union. And then in the end, we don't have almost all our countries, we don't have anything in place locally, so we don't have this information in the legislation. And I know it's not prohibited, but it's harmful. And you have the other countries. It is outsourced to NGOs, media literacy and fact-checking. The only successful examples in the world are those countries that didn't outsource that it was the effort of the entire society. My favorite example is Sweden, which was not, just repression, legislation. It was a lot of education, but like everyone participated in that. In our countries, that is left, to small newsrooms or NGOs that then seek for the project support, and there is no continuity, there is no willingness to incorporate that in the public policies on the national level.
Thank you, and I really would like then to I'll ask you about solutions and what should be done. Interesting that always when we talk about best cases and best practices, we look at the Nordic countries, what by accident. But let me turn to the room and see if there are questions, anybody who had, or comments, or anything you would like to share. I see a hand there. We can have a microphone in the first row. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'm going to sit, of course. So my name is Miodrag Milicevic, and I do come from Kosovo. I do represent NGO Active, which is community-based organization. And I've got a comment, actually, which I'm going to really to post in Serbian language, if you don't mind. My commentary vezan za vaše...
My comment is related to your presentation from Creek. We all have the impression that responsible journalism has been lost. It has disappeared somewhere. We have a lot of indecency in the media, and it's quite clear to average consumers. So my question is, what should be done? How can we adequately respond to this type of indecency? How can we influence the institutions and the general society, including the media, of course, to join forces and respond to this indecency which exceeds everything that we have seen so far? A question for you. Thank you.
Relevant question. Let me see if there are any other questions, to collect a couple of those and then go back to the panelists. A gentleman there.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Igor Popovic, and I teach at law school in Banja Luka in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I'm a lawyer, one of the rare lawyers here, I would say. I also have a comment or a question for Maria from Creek. First of all, thank you for your wonderful work. We enjoy reading your articles, and I understand that you are under great pressure, especially recently, due to these slaps and other legal actions that are being taken against you. You have mentioned that you're not combating disinformation anymore, but propaganda, and as a fact checker. So my question for you is, should you do this? Because propaganda like Putin is Tsar, Vucic is great, Kurti is a psychopath, that's a value judgment. It's not a fact. You cannot prove that he is not a psychopath or that he is. So all you can do is analyze. You can persuade public that these journalists are making some sort of a propaganda. But should you, as a fact checker, do that? I mean, we're speaking about two different concepts. Whereas propaganda usually includes a lot of value judgments, a lot of opinions, and they do not rely on facts. And you, as a fact checker, should, you should examine whether these facts are true or not. And just from the legal point of view, propaganda per se is not illegal content. It is a harmful content, but it is not illegal. So I think you are definitely in much worse position if you have to persuade that someone is not a great person, that someone is not a psychopath, and so on. But maybe that is up to the journalist to inform, to create this public opinion, and that, of course, on me as your reader, that I have to think with my head a little bit that someone is not a Tsar just because he's doing this and this. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's start with these two questions, both really relevant about the legality aspect, and I think is really important to stress that in some countries around these and other regions, there have been attempts to criminalize fake news, which have gone very badly. So we definitely, as you rightly stress, propaganda and opinions is not illegal. Even fake news is not illegal. Even disinformation is not illegal, and it should not be. But what does it all mean? Let me start with Maria, but I think both questions are really relevant for all our speakers. Maria, so how do we get more visibility for public interest journalism? There is so much journalism that is not what we, most of us in this room would consider proper journalism. So how do we get more visibility for what is actually public interest journalism? And the question that our lawyer in the room raised, are we correcting facts, or are we just opinions?
Pa, boga mi, ova pitanja su...
Both questions are very, very good. These questions are crucial, and I keep asking them to myself. I'm afraid I cannot offer you any answer. I'm more of a problem finder than a problem solver, so I'm not so sure what would be the answer. I disagree that there is no responsible journalism anymore. There is responsible journalism in Serbia. There are only a few newsrooms with a very small reach because we operate online. On the other hand, the enemy is much wealthier, much more influential and more powerful, and it is a big challenge for our motivation because we wonder who is our audience, who can hear us, but people do hear us. It's surprising to what extent they can hear us. Let me remind you that student protests are ongoing for 6 months already in Serbia. And to me, the number of people on the streets was quite unexpected. I cannot say that this is thanks to the work of investigative journalists only, but I can say that the responsible journalism has contributed to this mobilization of a large mass of people. So what should be done? A synergy is needed probably in order to... I think it's not possible not to have irresponsible journalism. We will have to keep fighting for truth and freedom. It's an ongoing battle. I mean, we will never reach a stage where we would be fully satisfied with our wonderful public space, free of propaganda or manipulation. This is impossible because there are always interest groups, and it's in their interest to disseminate lies. But we can increase the awareness level. It is impossible if everything is up to a handful of responsible journalists or a number of students. The expectations are really high from them, but it's necessary for the education system and legislation to get involved, and politicians. I'm very hesitant when it comes to expecting anything from the government and politicians. Whenever they interfere, it's not good, but without political will, we don't have a good basis for anything. I don't know if this is the right answer. I'm sure there would be 10 more additional questions. And the second question is, does it make any sense to debunk and fight propaganda narratives? It's a good question. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. If you write one and the same article for 20 times, my personal inner feeling is that it doesn't really make sense. But a good news is, let's say, that fake news appear in various areas. Sometimes you can dive in climate change topics or human rights and freedoms. You can, leave the tabloids for a moment and dive into the world of right-wing portals. The situation is a bit different there. I don't want you to misunderstand me. The gray propaganda and narratives are not the only thing that is out there. There are fake news that can be challenged and contested. And we have to keep explaining people what propaganda is what kind of messages are conveyed. This is a part of increasing media literacy and political literacy. We have to keep explaining to people how an adequate political message should look like, a message that appeals on your anger, emotions, your national pride. And when you scratch the surface, you can see that all of this is very hollow. We have to teach people this is our job, among other things. They have to be able to recognize lies, and they have to be able to see what the solid facts look like. So it's a difficult question, and it's difficult to answer. But we do what we have to do. Journalism has never been free of challenges. Maybe the challenges changed with time, but this is not an easy profession, which can be done in ideal circumstances always. And the more difficult the circumstances, our job is more important. I wish I lived in Denmark, but I think it makes more sense here because we have to solve our problems, everyone in their own way. This is my final message. Maybe it sounds too idealistic.
Important, positive message there. And let me bring this question also to some of the other panelists. Florian, you do a lot of debunking and fact-checking for Meta, you said, in particular. Or is this an issue there? Basically, when I suppose you send recommendations to Meta about content that should be deprioritized or removed entirely, and I may be entirely wrong, you tell me how you do that. Is this an issue basically understanding what is a fact, which is wrong, and what is just an opinion that we should be able to see different opinions?
Yes. Good question. First of all, we don't try to censor anything. Yeah, that's very important to me because I think every fact checker is against censoring. We just try to add context to a claim that the user can see what are the facts and is able to build their own opinion. It's very interesting how we select those claims because it's also relevant for the question about checking propaganda, because sometimes we discuss in our team for 1 hour if a claim is checkable or not. We are not in the position to fact check opinion. We are not in the position to fact check satire, for example. Yeah, because there is the freedom of expression and freedom of opinion, and the freedom of art also, of course. So it's very hard to find claims that are very clear claims. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also from the legal point, because we don't want to check anything where the user can say, hey, you made an error or something like that, or there are sources that support my claim, because it would mean that we have a lawsuit and maybe we have to pay thousands of euros because this person sold books on their Facebook site or something like that. So that's very difficult to find those claims. And regarding the cooperation with Meta, we are only responsible to produce texts for these claims. If there is a claim on Facebook or on Instagram, especially claims that have a lot of shares, then we produce a text and then we deliver it to Meta, and Meta decides how to illustrate this or how to add this to the claim. So you might have heard the accusations from Mark Zuckerberg, who said that fact checkers are censors and political biased. That's not possible at all, because Meta was all the time responsible for how to show these fact checks to users, and it was no censorship at all, because you just have to do 2 clicks and then you can see the original false content. So nothing, no restriction at all. And yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, so basically when, because I'm going back to the issue of visibility, on Meta, for example, whenever they accept to publish your text, that will be more visible than the original claim for the users?
I hope so. I know that there is also research that it's not the case, that correction always is less visible or gets shared less than the original claim. That's also because of the character of fake news, because fake news are also always very emotional, and they try to show you anything new, and that your view of the world is not as it is, and then fact checkers are coming and try to correct it and say to the users, no, it's like it was before, and there is no emotional component about it. And of course, that's not what the algorithms in social media like and try to spread. And so we have very few, or we don't have the same chances like fake news to spread. So we have to get support in any form to try to spread confirmed information more than false information. And I think that social media partners and platforms are responsible for this, because they also try to disseminate the emotional stuff, where a lot of false claims are also part of it.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Let me bring this question. Sorry, first let's check if there is any other question for now. Otherwise, I would like to bring these questions to Milica also, and also understand so you all mentioned smear campaigns against fact checkers, attacks, all sorts of challenges. Who is there to protect the fact checkers, and who is there to fund the fact checkers? So three huge challenges that I see. First is the visibility element. How do we make sure that the accurate fact-based information is visible? Secondly, how do we, again, we spoke before about funding journalism, how do we fund these elements? Or how do we fund this additional effort that many newsrooms had to add to their costs? And third, yeah, how do we protect the fact checker? Or are they recognized? Is their role recognized?
I'll answer to that. I just wanted to go back to this propaganda and false news and fact checking. So, like everyone already explained, the fact checkers check the facts. And propaganda is combination of correct information, false information, opinion, other stuff. So it's not just an opinion. And there is also methodology to disguise what is propaganda. So, and that is not what our newsroom is doing. Our newsroom is fact-checking the fact-checkable claims. But I'm doing analysis of narratives, and it is important. It's not debunking in a way that you say this is not true, but it is, you reveal basically, okay, so this is propagandist narrative. It consists of this, and that is how this defines as propaganda. And you are basically educating citizens to be able to recognize propaganda. I took this just to make sure that, because there are also part of the smear campaign is censorship narrative, that for all of us, like freedom of speech is more important than anything else. Disinformation is not prohibited speech, propaganda is not prohibited speech. It's your freedom of expression to lie or do propaganda unless you are endangering some other protected right. Yeah. And when it comes to regulation, there are initiatives to punish, prohibit, stop. I'm especially for our countries completely against that. There are other ways to improve the situation. What are the other ways and who supports fact checkers? On the national level intervention, I would see a lot of space for this positive, affirmative action, so not repression, which would be to support journalism. So not necessarily and exclusively fact-checking specific operations, but actually if you promote fact-checking as important integral part of journalism and you offer support for newsrooms that would implement that, that would be a great, but not one-term support. That is something which you will never generate income on the market to be able to pay fact-checking. Just, you know, if it cannot rely on a profit. So if good journalism is activity in the public interest, then it should be also funded by the public funds. Yep. And this is something that we advocate for in Montenegro. So for the fund, not for us, not for fact-checkers, but for journalists, for media organizations to develop this within. Yep. There are also other not so affirmative regulatory framework issues, so not banning, but basically regulating, demanding more accountability from registered news outlets, similar to what, and I'm sure that you've spoken these days about DSA. Yep. So similar, so not to do censorship, but actually to ask them to mitigate the risks, so to ask them to register, to have transparency of editorial ownership, financial interests, to have developed policies that will ensure something that they don't have to call fact-checking, but it's editorial oversight of the content. And that is something like in Montenegro, journalistic community very divided from very different positions in an ideological spectrum. They agreed around this. So there is, like real media are really now, they started to understand that ultimate goal, ideal goal of the disinformation is to say everyone is the same, everyone lies to you, you should trust no one. And that is like, and then you go to crazy acts on Facebook to look for conspiracy theories because they convince you that no one is telling the truth. Many media now understand that they have to fight to define themselves as different, so we are not those. And I'm not speaking about perfection, I have to emphasize because there are lawyers here. There is also, not because of, but there is also right to make a mistake, which is so important part of journalism, and we shouldn't be putting pressure on journalists not to ever make a mistake. But there is also honest way to correct that mistake, and fact-checkers also don't serve for that, to label, you know, mistakes and to increase the pressure that is already very high with lawsuits, with slaps, with pressure from the authorities. And for the others, so we need supports, like I said before, it has to be done something in our own countries. We are still looking at the donor support, and many of us also work with third-party fact-checking program of Facebook. Some people work with TikTok, or and we see with the developments in the United States that this is coming to an end, even in Europe. European Commission will not be able to say you have to work with fact-checkers, but we are hoping that they will say you have to make that other alternative mechanism functional. You have to make community nodes that have some, that are not like Twitter community, X community nodes, which is, if it's made functional, it will make, you know, fact-checking will remain important and essential. But I think that we all have to do something about mainstreaming this pain in the neck, expensive policies that are saving the journalism, but also saving journalists and saving newsrooms from very malign lawsuits and pressures that are leading people to leave the business or entire businesses to shut down.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And this is also precisely one of the main issues in which the representative and the office of the representative works on. I'm been told that we have to wrap up. In one sentence, very difficult, what makes you hopeful? Maria. Or anybody who would like to start.
Should I?
Go ahead, Rashid, please.
Okay, well, what makes me hopeful is that I believe that people will always want to know the truth or read the truth. So there's always be room for fact-checking or people or decent journalists who do a great job.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? Something that gives you hope? We're closing this conference. We heard a lot of concerns, a lot of problems.
Okay,
Sorry,
what makes me hopeful is I was going to say rakia. Sorry. Yeah. What makes me hopeful is actually how my colleagues are brave. So I would like to emphasize that I during these 10 years, I met some of the bravest people ever, people of integrity. So shout out to them. I think that actually makes me very hopeful. Brave journalists.
Thank you. That's also wonderful. Thanks.
I wanted to say nothing makes me hopeful, but now when Maria said it, so actually we will be facing really difficult decades, democracy workers generally, and very difficult few years, and then ups and downs, but the investments in the community, which was big, and a lot of knowledge, and I think it appears that the community is really resilient, and with all of these hits, you know, United States, global aid thing, I don't see any quitters. I see people who are decisive to survive, and, you know, making strategies to do other jobs in order to be able to fund the most important jobs, which is like in research and fact-checking. And I'm not really an optimist, but when you are surrounded with people like that, then you have to fight together with them. You know, you can't abandon. That's a treason. So resilience makes me hopeful.
Thank you, Florian. Anything that makes you hopeful?
Yeah, sure. What makes me hopeful is that our work was a lot of years in the shadows, and we got no attention at all. And now, after some time, we get a lot of attention from politics, even through we try to keep distance to them, but also from the media sector. And the only last part who's missing is the community, the normal people, the readers who gain trust to us. And I think there are two possible scenarios for the future. The first scenario is a very dark one. People not knowing what's false and what's true, and only accepting information that fits to their worldview. And the other scenario is that people don't know what's false or true, but they try to find back to journalism and fact-checking because they know they commit to a strict set of criteria, and that would be a very good scenario for the future.
So let's make sure we get to scenario number 2.
Yeah.
And so we have recognition, we have resilience, we have courage, and we have the pursuit of truth. And thank you so much. And if you would join me in thanking the panelists, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. And now I would like to invite our director, Philippe Tremblay, for our closing part of this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, participants, for this also very enriching panel. And we're arriving, unfortunately, already at the high-level closing segment of this conference. And I would like to invite to the floor His Excellency Minister Edin Forto, Minister of Communications and Transport of Bosnia-Herzegovina. Minister Forto, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Ambassador. I hope you had a great conferences and panels. And I'm just going to say a couple of things on the topic. One is the increasing propensity of politicians to try to criminalize free speech, especially something they call libel. And also a topic that is especially up to date here in Bosnia, it's the survival of our public service, which has also a political background in why this is happening, and the fact that the European Commission, one of the priorities for Bosnia and Herzegovina to actually access negotiations with the EU is to have a sustainable, financially sustainable and viable public service, which currently we do not have. On the first topic, I must say, when I got my BA in media and journalism 26 years ago in the United States, one of the most interesting classes that I took, two stood out. One is a legal class that was far harder than I thought it would be, of learning all the precedents and how it came to be that in the United States, when you misspell one letter of one last name, you get sued by millions, for millions of US dollars, and how it came to that, and responsibility that you have when you go into the public space. So this legal course is just as relevant today. But one other course that is growing in relevance immensely since 26 years ago is we had a course on learning to check your source. We had a whole course on it. How to go behind where the information comes from and how to verify it. This sort of media literacy that is becoming increasingly important is somehow left out of our curriculums. There's a whole new generation of people that are using the new media that don't know how to check their sources, and a whole bunch of old people that definitely don't know how to use them. And we have a completely changed landscape in misinformation, because people think that something that is published on a social network as a status is actually the news. And there's so much work to be done on this. Part of the problem that Bosnia and Herzegovina has currently, and I think it's a regional problem as well, is that the fact that you can have a couple of people with cell phones set up a website and make it look like a news site, and then publish whatever they please, and then not sign it, goes out as the news, and people believe it. And for every 100 people that believe it, only 4 to 5 people are reached of those 100 who believe in the original fake news. Only 5 of those 100 are reached by the dement, by someone who says that this is not actually true. So given that propensity of politicians in the region to try to have a legal code to actually fix this problem, where they're sometimes attacked by completely invented stories, they go completely in the wrong direction. Instead of forcing curriculum and forcing education to check the source, they go into trying to ban them or criminalize them. And we have this in Bosnia, especially in one of our entities, Republika Srpska. There's a very dangerous law. They can knock on your door at midnight and ask you, why did you publish this on your Facebook? They can do that. And they can take you and question you and so on. But it's not just Republika Srpska. Some of the cantons in Bosnia also are trying to pass codes that are going to make it harder to have free speech online and free speech in general. So instead of going towards the education route, we're going towards the legislating something that actually can go completely wrong. And my advice, of course, would be to strengthen the education part. And as someone who comes from a political party, I fight the other way, the legislation that is criminalizing free speech. But there has to be a way to fight this liberal paradox when everyone can say everything, and some of these people who think they can say anything, they don't know that there's actually responsibility for that. I think that one of the ways to go is to have way more transparent ownership of the online media, something we don't have, and I'm fighting to have it in Bosnia, to have a law or a separate law or part of the communications law, electronic communications law, where it would be mandated to have an impressum, to know, so you know who's behind something that looks like the news, but it's not. It's actually just a smear campaign. This is one part. The other part is the fact that not only public broadcasting companies in the region are politicized. We all know how that works. In Bosnia, it's even worse. There's a whole political class trying to completely annihilate them. We have three. Two of them are completely under control, and one that is our public broadcaster, BHRT, the national public broadcaster, is under constant attack, financial attack, not political, financial attack. And we can't seem to budget for them in the way that other normal countries do. And what I want everyone who is in the freedom of media sector to go out and say that if the European Commission for Bosnia and Herzegovina has said in a sequence of their reports that financially stable and viable public service is precondition for becoming the member or even opening negotiations with the EU and opening the acquis, this needs to be repeated over and over again so that that political class that claims to be pro-European cannot do this anymore. We have to have, like every other country, every member country and non-member country, they have a financially viable public service. It's not the case in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's something we have to fight for. I'm sorry to use the local example, but I'm sure that regionally we can find examples like that all over the place. Not only putting them under political control, but in our case, in Bosnian case, trying to actually close them down, which is a disgrace. So I just gave you two points on what's happening and how I see it. But I want to thank the OSCE for putting this conference in Sarajevo and speaking about something that I think is most important thing currently in the wave of states trying to influence what can be published. And even though technology is moving forward, the methods are going backwards. And the liberal societies, open societies, haven't figured out a way how to fight this. And authoritarian societies know really well and know how to weaponize this and what to do with the new technologies. If we don't catch up, we're going to lose the game. Thank you again, and I'll see you at the next conference.
Thank you very much, Minister Forto, for this inspiring talk about the need to keep our societies open. And now it's my pleasure to pass the floor to the representative on freedom of the media, Ambassador Bratu. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe, and thank you, Minister Forto, thank you for your commitment to the values that we are espousing, also from the representative on freedom of the media. I wish we had more politicians with your commitment, not just in this region, but throughout the OSCE region. So thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as we bring this year's Southeast Europe Media Conference to a close, I want to thank all of you for your participation, for your discussions, and for your commitment to advancing media freedom and viability in your region. These past 2 days, I believe, have reaffirmed that this conference is a valuable space for dialogue and collective resolve. It is the space where we confronted realities, uncomfortable realities, but nonetheless realities, where we have sought to find common ground and mutual understanding and forge new ways ahead in the ongoing pursuit of a media landscape that is free, independent, safe, and not the least viable. The conversations that we have had, whether during the sessions or the many networking opportunities, were anchored in your experience, I believe shaped also by your understanding of the urgency, and driven, I believe, also by a very shared conviction that media viability is essential for fostering informed, resilient, and not the least secure societies. Media viability, ladies and gentlemen, is a prerequisite for participatory democracy. Together, we have explored the intersecting challenges that shape the media landscape, from political and legal pressures, safety threats, to not the least financial instability, but also the dominance of big tech and the rise of generative artificial intelligence. The challenges are many, and as Minister Forto has pointed out, we are lagging behind. We need to catch up. We have discussed how economic fragility and uncertainty leaves media vulnerable to political capture, but also to self-censorship. And we've examined the erosion of public trust, the tightening grip of disinformation, and the increasingly precarious conditions for local journalism. We've heard how, when ethical journalism is not viable, societies lose a critical safeguard against corruption and disinformation. Participatory democracy is undermined, while polarization and untruth take over. It is not only that, to quote, democracy dies in darkness, unquote, but that it is undermined by untruth and distrust. We have also reaffirmed that viability is not only about revenue models or market share, it's about safety, sustainability, and trust. A viable media ecosystem is one where journalists can do their work without fear, where editorial independence is protected by law, but also in practice, and where public values journalism as a public good, as indeed was the case, I believe, in the past in very many countries. Throughout the sessions, I believe we have identified some concrete areas where progress is both necessary but also possible. There is optimism in the room. It's not all bleakness. We have to work on what is possible. We have to build on the optimism to make it real. We have heard powerful calls for stronger protection against abusive legal actions, such as slaps. We've discussed the importance of public service media reform to ensure that public service media continues serving all segments of society in an impartial, independent, and professional manner. And that is not the least a top issue for me here in Bosnia and Herzegovina, to support public broadcaster. We have explored strategies for innovation, collaboration, and resilience, especially in local and community journalism. And we have recognized the essential role of factuality and ethical reporting. The importance of factuality and ethical reporting in building resilience to disinformation and fostering a better informed society. And ladies and gentlemen, it is not about the amount of information, but the quality of information. We've also seen the problematic issues. We've discussed them. We were reminded, especially by the powerful keynote address delivered yesterday by Einar Holien from the Schibsted Media Group, that investing in media viability is not a cost, but it's an investment with a democratic dividend. It pays off not only in stronger institutions and better informed citizens, but in enhanced public trust, improved social cohesion, and ultimately long-term security for our societies. These are outcomes that no society can afford to ignore. Or if we ignore, if politicians ignore, they are building a very insecure future, a future of problems, a future of conflict. I do not believe that anyone wants that for their societies. These discussions do not end here. As part of my commitment to action, we will produce an outcomes report based on key findings and recommendations from the discussions. It is my intention that this report will serve not only as a record of our dialogue these 2 days, but as a resource for participating state governments, media stakeholders, and international partners alike. The report will reflect the unique priorities of this region and offer some concrete guidance, some suggestions for guidance for advancing media freedom and media viability in real and concrete terms. And then it will be up to governments, authorities, whether they wish to act on these recommendations. But I can assure you that given my mandate, I will be advocating very strongly for this. I urge all of us to approach the conference and the forthcoming report not as a conclusion, but as a point of departure on a journey that we must make together. Media freedom cannot survive in a vacuum. It must be rooted in a system that protects editorial independence, that supports journalistic professionalism, and which recognizes the essential role of public interest media in democratic life. Ensuring these conditions requires more than statements of support. It requires action, coordination, and long-term commitment, not just by governments, but by all of us. Before we part, let me take this moment to thank once again everyone who made this conference possible, our insightful panelists, our moderators, our colleagues from OSCE field operations in the region, not the least our interpreters and technical staff, and of course I want to thank my RFoM team who have ensured the smooth running of every detail from start to end. But it is not an end, because we shall continue. As we return to our various countries, I encourage each of you to carry forward the momentum that I believe we have built together here over these last couple of days. Let's not allow these insights to remain within the walls of this conference. Let these insights inform our thinking, our policies, and that we put these thoughts and policies into action to energize our institutions and shape our regional cooperation. The commitments have been made. They have been made by governments in this region. These are OSCE commitments adopted by consensus. But it is necessary to rise above daily politics and build societal resistance and resilience for the long term. Media companies also have a corporate social responsibility to our societies, to their societies. As indeed, and I quote again, I refer again to the Schibsted group that operate in the Nordic region, and other media companies demonstrate. They understand that they have a role to play. They have a responsibility. I wish I could see more media companies in this part of Europe understand the same. I shall advocate for that. But editors and journalists also have responsibilities in this regard. We have shared responsibilities. So let's continue to work individually and collectively towards a Southeast Europe where media can inform freely, operate safely, and I hope flourish, and flourish sustainably. Because in the end, when we invest in media viability, we invest in our democracy, not somebody else's. our democracy, the future for our children, for your children. And their future is here. This is their homeland. And when we protect independent journalism, we protect the future of our societies, of your societies. We protect the future for our children, your children. Thank you for engagement. Thank you for your resolve. I can assure you I shall continue to push on the principles and the commitments, but I need your help and your dedication in order to achieve results. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Bratou. Dear participants, colleagues, this concludes this year's conference. Thank you for your active participation. This is not over yet. You're all welcome to join us for lunch, like yesterday, in the hotel's restaurant. Thank you again.